Good evening, welcome to Value Raters Class Act, which is getting a good name for itself because over the last few weeks we've been looking at the main Cheltenham races. We're going to be looking at another one a bit later on, the OLBG Mares Hurdle. What's your favourite? You can tweet us in. Also a number of questions that have been sent in, and we'll look back on the racing from the weekend as well. 1 or 2 pointers maybe for some of the lesser races at Cheltenham. One maybe a pointer for the Grand National, but anyway, we'll come on to that very soon. I'd like to introduce Matt Mitter. Good evening, Matt.
Good evening, Peter. We're getting ever so closer. I mean, 2 weeks today, we're going to know the outcome of all these races, aren't we?
Yeah,
the Hurdle and the Mares. And the Mares race can be in 2 weeks' time.
That's right. And by the close of play on the Tuesday, it'll be all done and dusted the first day. It's come around very quickly.
Yeah, it has come around really quickly. One thing I do think is important is that, something I was discussing with a friend of mine, is that we can all get caught up in the excitement of it all when looking at some of these races, when really, you know, some of them are so competitive. You know, you think you've got value when really, you know, you probably find better value in the week somewhere, you know. So this year I'm going to learn from some of my mistakes I have done. I've had a couple of good years at Cheltenham, but I remember last year I got carried away with it all when the form wasn't actually all together because of the bad winter we had. So this year I think I'm not going to get caught up too much in the excitement.
Well, it's more there this year, isn't
Absolutely.
it? We're going to take a look at the OLBG Mares Hurdle a little bit later on, but every week we are inundated with emails and tweets, and this week we're going to take on 4 tweets very quickly. First of all, David Stanage, she said, not sure whether you've covered the mares yet. We are going to. But I think Pirates Queen looks a great value bet. And Mary King for the 3-mile handicap. Yeah,
well, we'll come to Pirates Queen a little bit later because, as you just said, we will be covering the mares race a little bit later on, so stay tuned for that. Mary King, interesting. Do feel perhaps unless the ground comes up soft, at Cheltenham, I think Mary King really does want it like that. Stays all day. I agree from this year's Hennessy run that form is looking better now than I originally thought, and looks well handicap on that run. But it doesn't win, does it, Mary King?
It's more a lot of placed,
a lot of
figures
placed and all that. So I don't think I'll be too keen on the win aspect. But if you want to play, certainly place. But I do think maybe save Mary King for a day when it's a roar of attrition like we've seen perhaps on Hennessy Day.
And Mary King's, I mean, maybe a pointer that it's been left out for that long.
Absolutely.
OK, Mark A2AM, I hope I've got that correct. Please take a look at the run of Diobando, second behind Calcutta in Ireland. Running really well, clear of the rest. Currently 25 to 1 for the Fred Winter at Cheltenham. Really love your show. Yes, great. But what about the form of the Irish?
Yeah, this actually, thanks for your tweet. Interesting one again. We had one similar last week. Yeah, these have gone on notice to me, and I did have a look at the tape. It's trained by Ross O'Sullivan, perhaps not one of the most sexiest trainers, but has got that entry, as you mentioned there in your tweet. And we'd last seen this horse actually disappointed, but it was second behind Calder of Willie Mullins, beaten 8 lengths, put in his place by that horse. But I must admit, travelled through the race really well, looking like better ground would probably be the key to the horse. I mean, I did just mention there that he disappointed the time before, but I think that might have been ground. It was quite soft. It's got an action to me that probably ideally good to soft ground. I think he would handle good ground, but the winner of that day, Calco, went on to win a Grade 2 and then went on to be second in a Grade 1. The million-dollar question is, he hasn't got a handicap mark at the moment, so a lot would depend what the handicapper allots him. But I do agree with your tweet that if it's not at Cheltenham, he's a very, very interesting horse, and he's certainly, for me, more than useful.
OK. Andrew Bullen, thank you very much indeed. I just would like to get your opinion on the champion hurdle market, and do you reckon for him will be a bigger price than 5 to 4 on the day? I'm going to answer that question in a minute, but let Matt do it first.
Yeah, will it be bigger on the day? I think a lot will depend on what happens, how the bookmakers feel. If they get a good result in the Supreme, from my experience of working with a bookmaker at Cheltenham, that's quite often, you know, if they get a good result in the first, those bookmakers get those chests out and think, come on, we'll take him on and push him out a little bit. But let's not forget, this is going to be the main Irish play on that first day, and they'll come over and you know, when they start having it, they might shorten it up. 5 to 4 at the moment, no running, no bet. I wouldn't be in a rush to be taking that, so I would hold your horses, but it will have to be interesting to see.
My feeling is that bookmakers tend to err on the side of caution anyway at this point. They don't want people on anti-post plunging a lot of money onto a particular horse, and I think personally it might go off at 6 to 4, but it's not going to go off any bigger than that maybe 13-8, something like that. I think they err on the side of caution right now.
Yeah,
because, you know, there's no run and no bet. You know, 5-4. I mean, so many occasions last year beforehand when the Cheltenham comes on day, you know, you only got to look at Irvine. I think that was very short for the opening race, and it drifted out to 7-2. Side de Grugy was another example of that. They really wanted to take that on. It went out to 7-2.
Yeah, generally, yeah, I agree. Especially with the short ones, just leave them. I mean, at the moment, we're all, like you say, no running, no bet. And if you look at the percentage these bookmakers bet into, it's not really fair game at the moment. And on that Cheltenham week, they'll all be after your money. So then they start getting more competitive. So absolutely leave that alone. And I've said it before, you know, unless you think you found some value at huge prices, double figure, I would say, you know, a lot can happen between now and Cheltenham.
And sometimes these bookmakers actually will offer special offers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, OK. David Standage, I hope I got your surname correctly. He said he's sitting on Sarkando at 60s. How do you think he will go? My mate said he would not get up the hill.
Well, I wouldn't mind buying that ticket off you at 20s if you want to lay it. If you want to lay it off
60s,
you know, I could I'll take it at 20-1 if you like. No, you sat on a tremendous bet. Take no notice of your friend. I think he'd definitely get up the hill. I think last year's World Hurdle. Actually, we're going to speak a little bit about that when we talk about Annie Power a bit later. But I think Zarkanda's an improving horse from last year, and I can see him improving enormously. And it was staying on strongly enough last year up the Cheltenham Hill for me in the World Hurdle when given a little bit to do, I felt. So keep hold of that ticket. It's now favourite at the moment for the World Hurdle, with more than that now out. And if I was you, I'd be getting very, very excited. I mean, to be sat on a 60-1 bet when you've got that, a wise man would say lay it off for a free bet, but, you know, you're on for it, you know, you should have a good run.
Is it fair to say that Zarkando improved with the application of the horse?
I think so, yeah, I think so.
OK, yeah, I wouldn't certainly be taking that ticket away, especially with more of that out and question marks of, well, Annie Power going for the Mears, surely.
Yeah.
Right, OK, we're going to reflect on the weekend, and there were some pointers to Cheltenham, probably the last ones. We did say a week before that would be it, but it probably was an afterthought in relation to Sire de Grugy, because they needed to get the confidence in the horse, upwards of £20 to Grey Gold.
Yeah, I thought this was, I mean, I was on Bet Racing Nation on Saturday, and I made the point that, I mean, this was where Far West hasn't run its race. I mean, he was beaten well back.
Did bleed.
He did bleed. Well, there's the excuse there for him, but this was impressive. We've been absolutely lumps away, a stone and £6 to Grey Gold by 7 weeks, but you just, you know, you just think Grey Gold, well, so what? Well, Grey Gold was actually behind Dodging Bullets, who was beaten 24 lengths by Dodging Bullets over the same distance and met at a different track. But when you look at Sire de Grugy beating Grey Gold, he turns out a £27 better horse. So even on the form book, if you take it literally, Sire de Grugy comes out 3 lengths in front of Dodging Bullets. Now, I've got Dodging Bullets rated 177. I think Sire de Grugy, should I say, has run right up to his mark. I've got him 179. Now, that's the same mark I gave him for winning a champion chase. I thought this was a tremendous effort, and even though I wouldn't be rushing to take the 7-2...
So visually, it's a difficult one for me, because obviously the bookmakers reacted straight away, didn't they? And they went, like, 7-2, 4-1. I mean, obviously, if you take Far West, who hadn't run his race, and Grey Gold, who is, as you said, a good yardstick, if you like, I'm not altogether sure that proves anything. I didn't see where the emphasis was, we're going to crash it down from 9-1 to 7-2 was, you know?
Well, before the horse turned up at Newbury, I think, what was he, around the 7-2 mark?
Yeah.
And then there was that drift after that tonight. But what I think what he went to prove there, I mean, if we believe in the British handicapping system, which I think we've got to, Sire de Grugy has beaten a horse rated 152, given a stone and £6 for a 7-length beaten. Now, just on that workings out, I'll quickly do the maths for people. 152, it comes out 179, which is the same as mine. You know, we can't just keep on crabbing and say, well, he hasn't run his, you know, Grey Gold hasn't run his race. Mr. Greaves, even though he had 9 stone 7, was out of the handicap by some way. I think this is a tremendous performance, given absolutely lumps away. It ties in Grey Gold, as I say, with Dodging Bullets, and he's you know, for me, he's run right up to his best. Whether that's going to be enough to win this year's Champions Chase, that's another subject. But I think this went to prove after Newbury, this was a massive step back on track.
OK, so just to confirm with me, on that run, you're saying that Saida Gruji is the same, if not £1 better, than when he pitched up at the Champion Chase last year?
Absolutely.
Beltor was another impressive winner at the weekend. In fact, pulled the jockey's arms off. I think it was Feely on. Well, I can't remember who it was.
O'Brien.
Sorry, that's right, absolutely. And pulled all the way round and then pulled away.
It took a keen hold. Wasn't, you know, the Grade 2 winner now. Now, this horse was very impressive last time. I know it was Lowly Ludlow who turned up. That form had worked out terrifically well. In fact, I tipped this horse up on Bet Racing Nation on Saturday. All Yours in second of Paul Nicholls, and the favourite Nicky Henderson was some way back. Before going into this race, I had Baltor as a 151 horse, and that might seem a lot, but it was just with some collateral lines at Ludlow. I'm not sure he's run to that mark here. Like you said, he was very keen on what was very soft ground. I've rated this performance 141, but you could easily put a plus on that if you take in consideration how keen he was.
Was there much behind?
I don't know. I mean, Nicky Henderson horse, I'm pretty sure that horse hasn't run its race from before. He looked very tired in the closing stages on different ground. What devalues this performance for me is of Officer Drivel, who had an official mark of 124. I got him rated at only £1 higher, 125. He's on the scene. So that slightly brings me to 141. Maybe Officer Drivel is a little bit better. But overall, the form has a confused look for me. And it's one... I think Baltor going forward is not going to be, because of his nature, he's not going to be suited to tracks like Cheltenham and probably is a flat ground horse.
OK, we really haven't got long, actually, before we take the next break. So I'm going to mention three to you: Irish Saint, Days of Heaven and Rocky Creek.
Yeah, Irish Saint, very quickly. I don't think we learned any more about him. I think once Melodic Rendezvous
Mm.
made that mistake, didn't run its race and beat a Holly Penny the way he should.
OK.
Days of Heaven, very good performance. That horse needs another year for me in small fields. I think he would get absolutely lost at sea in big fields. He still looks a bit immature, but I think he's got a lot of class going forward.
And also the trainer, Nicky Henderson, has said Days of Heaven will not be going to Cheltenham.
Okay.
It'd just be
yeah,
too big.
I didn't read that, but he does appear to be that horseman. The second horse, Vaga Collonge, good yardstick that came out of a real Grade 2 race at Cheltenham. No reason to think he hasn't run his race. I do think that's going to be strong form going forward. And finally,
I gave a winner on Saturday.
You gave a winner, and it was 8-1. 8-1. Rocky Creek. Now this was a good performance. A horse that I'd been saying a few names at. Wasn't finished in races last year. Paul Nicholls said afterwards they had that breathing operation, and didn't he finish his race all right this time off a mark of 154. I had him last season 172. I've raised that now. I think there's been a £3 improvement for perhaps that operation, and all roads now, his next target, of course, is going to be the Grand National. But I think going forward again, that's very sound form.
And Rajadhani Express was going perfectly well. Three from home clearly didn't stay.
Yeah, blatantly didn't stay. So
clearly didn't stay. Of the performances at the weekend, which one stood out for you? Probably got one word answer.
Yeah, I suppose going...
Saida
Gruji, obviously, sorry, yeah, Saida Gruji. I was trying to complicate it too much there. Saida Gruji, without a doubt, was the performance because it was great to see. But for me, that horse is right back to its best.
OK. Right, well, as I said, thank you very much for your tweets and your messages. Keep them coming. We'll give you email details at the very end of the programme. We are going to take a look and extensively preview the Mares OLBG Mares Hurdle at Cheltenham. That comes up after this short break.